footprints in all primates. The Skookum cast was found in a valley called Skookum Meadows near Mount St. Helens, Washington, located 150 miles from Seattle in the Cascade Mountains, and 330 miles from where the Patterson footage was shot in Northern California.
I've been Bigfooting for a couple years now.
Christine Walls is a botanist who is planning a new and unique Bigfoot search here in Skookum Meadows.
I have a theory about Bigfoot, and I think that they respond to women differently than they respond to men. A woman has a more, like a gentleness to her. Our voices are higher, more lyrical.
Based on the success of primate researchers Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey, Wall's entire team will be female.
In fact, a man in the forest is probably puts them on guard, makes them a little wary. And I think that a female in the forest piques their interest.
Walls will be joined by Melissa Hovey, Tracy Herigstad, Monica Rawlings, and Kathy Strain.
Women report having more close encounters with this animal. There seems to be the theory that this animal could be attracted to the female scent.
Are those overly ripe?
They smell great.
The team knows they must be much more than lucky. They will incorporate 8 vocalizations and wood knocking, another well-documented primate communication technique.
My goal is to make sure whatever we're doing is scientific. We find any kind of evidence that we're collecting it in a scientific manner so it can be analyzed and not contaminated, such as DNA or hair or, apple bites that might be preserved that shows us teeth, those kinds of things.
Another technique the team will use to draw the creature in on this expedition involves a less conventional approach.
We sing Christmas carols and lullabies, mainly because those are the lyrics that we know. And so, but it actually works out fine because it ends up being songs that are very gentle again.
I'd like to see us split into groups, perhaps early in the evening, do our own thing, maybe walk the roads, talk, sing. And then later in the evening, meet back at camp. Perhaps it would follow us in.
In the event there is any activity at night, the women will be waiting with an array of low-light cameras.
Trying out various camera systems, infrared, thermal, and starlight technology.
And Skookum Meadows is just right. The 2 hills that come together, I believe it's right at the bottom of the hill to the left.
This spot has a long history with the beast. Paul Kane was a traveling artist, capturing scenes across the northwestern frontier in the 1840s. While in an area that is now Washington State, Kane made a journal entry describing Native American accounts of an ape-like creature they called Skookum. March 26, 1847. We arrived at the mouth of the Catalpoto River, 26 miles from Fort Vancouver. I stopped to make a sketch of the volcano, Mount St. Helens. Distant, I suppose, about 30 or 40 miles. This mountain has never been visited by either whites or Indians. The latter assert that it is inhabited by a race of beings of a different species who are cannibals and whom they hold in great dread.
They say that the Skookum is a giant. He is hairy. He eats people. They will not go where he lives.
Skookum means mountain devil, so it's something that's very scary, something you don't want to have an encounter with.
The fearsome behavior of the Skookum does not seem to match modern-day descriptions as a creature that is shy, elusive, and yet curious. Just like the animal Christine Walls claims paid her a visit in 2004.
I hear at the corner of the tent that something is touching the top of the tent.
Christine Walls was camping in the Cascade Mountains when she had her first and only encounter with what she believes was a Bigfoot.
It would scrunch the tarps together, and I could hear it, and it was moving from side to side, and then it would step on it again, and then it would go away. It would go away for maybe several minutes, and then it would come back, and I'd hear the stepping on the tarp again. I'd hear it scrunching the tarp again. It was really having a great time.
Walls never felt threatened. It was more like a curious encounter. She never got a look at the animal, and it left as suddenly as it had arrived. But this time, Christine will be prepared.
I've got all of my tape recording equipment inside the tent, and so hopefully we'll have some activity tonight.
We'll go ahead and set it up and see if we can't align it to make sure that it's pointing in the correct direction and it's at the right height off the ground.
Motion-activated stealth camera traps will be positioned over bait throughout the area.
So we need to make sure we're marking it on the topo where we're putting the cameras and what time we're putting the cameras on. So our data recorder, make sure you record all that information so that we know when we're putting it out. We also need to count the apples, how many apples that we put out. Mm-hmm. And whoever's handling the apples, we've got gloves so we're not contaminating, putting our own scent back on it.
The next morning, they search the area and make a discovery just outside the main tent.
Possible tracks here. Okay. Possible heel, toes. All right. And here. Let's measure them. Let's measure them out. Okay. I'm gonna do this. Length is approximately 15 and 3/4 inches. Length on this one, about 14.
The prints appear old and weathered, but the outline is clearly visible.
For you since I left my gloves on. Let's go, girl.
Melissa and Monica cast the footprints for later analysis, hoping they may reveal dermal ridges or other details that might reveal the animal that made them.
Footprints, they appear to be large, bipedal, barefoot type prints. We haven't finished analyzing. I haven't seen the cast cleaned quite yet, so we'll have to judge from there what those will look like.
At the very least, they believe they are in the right area. Properly cast impressions can leave revealing detail, but determining what left the hair and bony imprints is another story. Some experts believe the Skookum cast could have been made by a known animal.
Yeah, I'd be particularly interested in seeing that of an elk.
Dr. Darius Swindler is a primate anatomist. He wants to do a comparison between an impression he made of the lower leg of an elk and what is believed to be the same anatomy from the Skookum cast. Elk frequent mud wallows to cool off and deter insects, and when lying down, an elk might make an impression similar to that made by a large primate.
But there is some similarity, I must confess. I'd like to be able to dissect this and just see how much of this is the muscle and how much is tendon.
Owen Caddy is joining Swindler to see if there is anything in the cast that might cause the wobbly walk or slumped posture seen in the Patterson footage. They focus on the Skookum leg cast.
Angle here is very different, slope.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some talk of maybe this is a feature from a slump, but
yeah,
nevertheless,
that's what I was wondering before.
This is concave and this is convex on the elk.
Yeah.
And I don't know that a slump would totally change it from a concave to a convex surface.
Yeah, that's a good point, really. Mm-hmm.
The other section to show a substantial difference is the Achilles tendon.
Again, the shapes are quite different.
Mm-hmm. So this is much more vertical.
Yeah, much more vertical, rounded.
The differences between the two specimens would indicate that the Skookum impression was not made by an elk. But what about a primate? According to Swindler, the thick matted hair detail is not human, and the size and shape of the leg does not match any other known primate. Skeptics of Bigfoot say that evidence like the Skookum cast and the Patterson footage would be more believable if it had been discovered and collected by wildlife biologists. But many of these discoveries have been first reported by laymen.
For 100 years, the natives reported big gorillas in the jungle in Rwanda, and yet it wasn't until 1950 that they were found. Certainly this area is as vast as that, So who can rule out the possibility that something like that couldn't exist here? I think it's possible.
Dr. Briggs Hall has spent decades in these forests and mountains as a veterinarian for the state of Washington. Dr. Hall has never seen a Bigfoot himself, but he believes any elusive animal can be found if proven methods are used.
Yeah, let's put the rope right here.
So we're going to go back into the most remote areas, the deepest canyons, the highest ridges. We're going to be at least a mile, set up our cameras at least a mile from any trail.
The search for new evidence is underway. But what about the microscopic images of the Patterson footage? The enhancements are now done, and for the first time ever, new detail will be seen.
This is the area where the horse becomes most lathered. We're hoping to get a lot of horse stink into this cloth, and then we're going to hang it in a tree in front of one of our camera traps.
Dr. Briggs Hall has studied most of the large animal wildlife in Washington state, except Bigfoot.
And I was a little frustrated that the scientific community and the government biologists had not made any attempt at all to follow up on any of these reports.
Hall had heard about Christine Wall's all-female Monster Quest expedition, made up of researchers, not scientists, and decided to investigate on his own.
So what I'd like to do is come across, and if we could get up here and look at the headwaters of this creek up here, looks like it's...
And like Walls, he too had an encounter with something he has difficulty explaining.
Last summer I was up in the Goat Rocks wilderness with a group of biologists, and we were capturing mountain goats. I don't sleep well in the sleeping bag, so I was tossing and turning, and about 1 o'clock in the evening, 1 o'clock at night, I heard what sounded like two sticks being knocked together. And in a rhythmic chunk, chunk, chunk. And I never heard that in the forest before, and I thought, what could that be? And I didn't have a flashlight. It was a very dark night, but it was coming from out behind the horses. I heard it 3 times between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. There was no question that I heard wood against wood. And there's elk up there, there's deer up there, there's bear up there, there's mountain goats, there's cougars, but it takes hands to knock sticks together. And so there's something else up there.
At the time, Hall knew little of primate behavior and decided to do a little digging.
When I started reading about mountain gorillas and orangutans, that I found out that that's normal primate behavior.
Hall believes the accounts of wood knocking and loud vocalizations could be apes communicating with one another, possibly to warn of an intruder.
If there really is such a thing as a great ape living in our mountains, he lives in the most remote areas. He's obviously very shy and goes to great difficulty to avoid people.
Hall's strategy is simple. Set up camera traps for an extended period of time and leave the area, a technique used by other wildlife researchers in search of elusive animals like tigers and jaguars.
We'll be setting up camera traps using a stealth cam, and this is a camera which uses both infrared technology as well as detects motion. Okay? Now the idea is when an animal walks in front of the beam, it's going to snap a photo, and the photo is going to be a high-resolution photo with in color. So there should be no problem distinguishing between a bear or an elk or a Bigfoot.
Okay, if our bait is right here, I don't know, it looks pretty good, don't you think so?
Yeah, I think it's right on.
Okay.
Briggs Hall has chosen a remote area called Goat Rock, bordering the Yakima Indian Reservation, 64 miles from Mount St. Helens. He believes this would be a good place to hide if Bigfoot wanted to avoid humans.
So it's going to be bushwhacking, so watch your step, and I think let's go 20 minutes, and then we'll try to find some identifiable, easily identifiable landmark, because I'm wondering if we can get a GPS location under the trees. This is the general area where I heard the wood knocking last year, and so it seems to me that this is a good spot to put a camera. If Sasquatch really wanted to find a place to go where he could avoid people, this would be the perfect habitat. You know, the areas where I want to put